I talked about it on Tuesday. I thought about it. I'm sorry, Tennessee fans. I just can't get there.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. So many games to get to. I'll talk about LSU and Florida, South Carolina, and Vandy. Don't sleep on that game because Vanderbilt did something last week that will have major ripple effects across college football, and the most underrated team in the Big 12 plays a big game this Friday. That is all on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. Tennessee fans are not going to be happy with me. I understand. Send me all of your comments, all of your tweets, DMs. Do it all. Do it all. I'm right here. I'm going to be right here after the game on this show, whether Tennessee wins or loses the game. I can't get there. I wanted to get there. There are so many reasons why Tennessee should win this game. They are at home. They have looked better through their first two games of the year so far than Georgia. They are running the ball better than the Bulldogs. I mean, you got a lot of things working for you there, Tennessee. But there are two things that ultimately get me to why I'm picking Georgia to win this game. This is not one of my best bets. It is Georgia minus 4.5, according to our friends at FanDuel on the road. I'm not leaning there yet. I'm just picking Georgia to win the game. That's all we're doing. I'm taking Georgia to win the game for two reasons. Reason number one, last time I checked, Kirby Smart, still the head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs. Pretty good. Pretty good. I probably should have made that reason number two. Because here's the one that I come down to. And you know what? You could say this stuff doesn't matter and it doesn't come into guys' psyche. And you know what? Sometimes it just does. And it had been, I don't even know how many years since Tennessee had beaten Alabama, and then they broke through. And if they break through here, hey, good for Tennessee. Good for the Vols. They have not beaten Georgia since 2016. Josh Dobbs was the quarterback for Tennessee the last time they beat Georgia. These teams have played every year since 1992. I can't get behind that. I want to. There's a part of me, and if Tennessee does go on to win this game, which is perfectly feasible, I don't think Georgia's going in there and steamrolling unless they start really clicking on all cylinders, but their offense would have to do things that they just haven't showcased consistently and haven't really been tested to this point. And Tennessee has definitely faced the biggest test. Of the four games played between these two teams, Tennessee has played Syracuse and East Tennessee State. Georgia has played I don't know and I don't care, and why was that second game so close? There was a weather delay. Well, I think Austin Peay had to deal with it as well. Do you know the city that Austin Peay is in? I do. Clarksville, Tennessee. I've been there. It's nice. Anyway, they got a lovely downtown area. Anyway, wanted to throw that out there. But when you haven't beaten a team since 2016, you have to show me more than better than I thought. Then going up against a Syracuse team that you should beat, and you did, and you look good doing it, I gave you your full credit because that's what Tennessee had rightfully earned after beating the Orange in a neutral site affair. Syracuse is a pullback team. I don't want to read too much into that particular game. It's the best measuring stick that we have for any of the four games that you can evaluate, 2 for Tennessee and 2 for Georgia at this point, but I can't get there. I think Gunnar Stockton does enough in this game. I think Georgia's offensive line and running game do enough in this game, and I've got Kirby Smart standing on the sideline. I think they will get it done. I'll take Georgia to win. Not a best bet. Not a best bet. My confidence level is, let's say, a 6.5 out of 10 on this game, but I think Georgia goes into Knoxville, gets it done. I think this is ugly at times. Maybe by the second half it starts to smooth itself out. Boy, usually I've got a score prediction that I can get right off the top of my head. I'll go 28-24. 28-24. Give me Georgia to go into Knoxville and beat Tennessee in the game of the week. But it should be a spectacular scene either way. I'm going to enjoy watching it. I can't wait. I'm going to react to it. Maybe I'll be wrong. And if I am, Tennessee fans, come let me know. I'll already know that I will have been wrong. But I'm just saying, you come tell me. That's the way this arrangement works. I'm accountable for my selection. Speaking of which, let's go to another big game in the SEC. One that looked bigger a couple of weeks ago to some. Florida's going to Death Valley. Do you know the biggest key for the Florida Gators to go to LSU and win this football game? Don't let it become a shootout. In the last 10 games in which the Gators and the Tigers have matched up, Florida has won 3 of those 10 games, including last year, by the way. So there's a bit of a revenge factor here for LSU, who's got a quarterback that I trust more, who's on their home field, who's playing significantly better football, and has a better coaching staff. Those are the only reasons, I'd pick LSU to win the game. In the 3 games that Florida has beaten LSU in their last 10 meetings, the point total has been under 50 every single time. Now, in this particular game, the point total is 47.5. So Florida better hit the under. They better hit if you go over, that's not good. That's not good. Here are the point totals that Florida has conceded to LSU in the last 10 matchups in a loss. 52, 45, 49, 37, 42, 17, there's one in there, and 35. So a shootout historically doesn't favor them in this spot. And that does apply, because I can already hear the comments of, don't talk about the past, it has no bearing on the present. Maybe it's just fun to discuss and think about and whatnot. Here's how it relates to this team. In no way, shape, or form do I trust the Florida offense against this LSU defense that has one of the most singularly impressive performances for any Power 4 unit in the entire country so far this year. They went on the road and held Clemson scoreless in the second half. And no, Clemson hasn't gotten off to an incredible start so far this season. But guess what? I'm not going to just take away from the fact that, you had a veteran OC and a veteran quarterback and a bunch of good weapons and big expectations for Clemson for people like myself and others, and you went and just held them scoreless in the second half. I think Blake Baker and the defensive staff there for LSU have really started to settle in. I think they have upped their talent. They have the top-rated transfer portal class. It has looked that way, like things are firing there. FanDuel's got this as a 7.5-point spread in favor of LSU there at home. I was tempted initially, when I made my score prediction, to say maybe Florida makes this closer than they should. Maybe they maximize their potential, whereas last week they played at, if you think of a team's potential output in a given week, like a mountain, some mountains are taller than others. Florida's mountain isn't low. It's not a tree stump. It's just not exactly Mount Kilimanjaro, or what's the tallest mountain in the world? I don't know. Off the top of my head, I think it's Everest. Probably Everest. That's the one I was trying to come up with. I don't know why Kilimanjaro popped into my head. Florida was playing down at base camp last week. Now, what if they go up to their peak? Well, then LSU could have some problems here. The issue is, I know this is the first time you're going to be hearing this from me personally, I don't have a lot of trust in Billy Napier and his staff. I know, brand new take. I just thought of it on the way to sit down to record this show. So I'll take LSU to win. I'd swallow the 7.5. It's not a best bet. I will have those third segment on my Friday show. As always, I will have one of my best bets talked about on this very program today. But I'll take LSU to win 35-13. I think they run away with that one in Baton Rouge. Let me know your thoughts below on Tennessee, Georgia, and on Florida, LSU. Do you think we're done with matchups? Nope, we're not. We're not even done with SEC matchups you need to be aware of. Are you aware of what Vanderbilt can do this week? You should be. First, this episode brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down and start with Illinois quarterback Luke Altmyer. Last week went out, had a multi-touchdown performance in a big win for the Illini at Duke, and Duke's got a sneaky tough game this week at Tulane. They're underdogs, actually, in that game. Yeah, Tulane. Pretty darn good program. John Sumrall will be a Power 4 head coach before you know it, but Luke Altmyer delivered last week. Diego Pavia, who I'm about to talk about for Vanderbilt, he delivered big time last week. Do you realize what the Commodores accomplished last week in Blacksburg? I will tell you about that later on today's show. But just like those players delivered for their teams, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, fuel your game day, only with DoorDash. Terms apply, promo period through November 18th. Check out DoorDash today. Do you realize what Vanderbilt can do this week? They could take South Carolina's playoff hopes and just break them in half like a Twix. I mean, just snap it and you go, oh, that's not going to happen. Here's why. South Carolina's schedule the rest of the year is not what you would call favorable in a number of different ways. They start with Vanderbilt for their first SEC game this week. They already played Virginia Tech. Both of these teams have actually played Virginia Tech, and both these teams beat Virginia Tech. And both these teams, let me get to what they did to Virginia Tech a little bit later on. Vanderbilt, then at Missouri, then Kentucky. Now, nothing there is too much for South Carolina to be able to handle for the two games that follow the Vanderbilt matchup at home this weekend. Do you know what happens after that? Oh boy, here comes the gauntlet. At LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, at Ole Miss, at Texas A&M, Coastal Carolina, and host Clemson. If South Carolina is not capable of winning this game, if they do not win the game, the math gets really difficult because of the back half of their schedule. But if they're not capable of winning this game against a good Vanderbilt team, then guess what? They are not capable, and you don't have to worry about whether the math works out or anything like that. Because if you can't go beat Vanderbilt on your home field as a 4.5-point favorite, according to our friends at FanDuel, then you're not going to be the team that a lot of people in Columbia, South Carolina were hoping you were going to have coming into the season. Now, two things I'm watching in this game when Vanderbilt travels to Columbia. Number one, does South Carolina jumpstart their running game? Through two games so far this season, they have run for just 244 yards as a team. As a team. That's not a lot. How often do you hear in big games the teams that wins the rushing battle goes on to win most of the time? Well, through two games so far, Vanderbilt's a much better rushing team. They're over 230 per game on average on the ground. So is South Carolina going to be able to establish the run? Number one. And number two, if they aren't, how much can you lean on Lenora Sellers? How much Superman sort of stuff can you ask him to do and still go out and win this game? This is not your, should we call it older brothers Vanderbilt team. This is the Diego Pavia-led Commodores, who last week committed what was probably a little surprising to those in Blacksburg who thought, oh, we've got a 10-point lead at the half. Holy smokes. This is looking good. We lost to Vanderbilt on the road last year. Turns out they were a pretty good team. And here we are, up 20-10. Do you know what happened after that? Diego Pavia and the Commodores went on a 34-0 run. 34-0. That was the second half for Vanderbilt last week in Blacksburg. Now they have to go to Columbia, and guess what? I don't think Diego Pavia is backing down. I don't think Diego Pavia is scared. Cedric Alexander has been running the ball really well to the tune of over 7 yards a carry so far this year. I like what I see from Vanderbilt so far. South Carolina is absolutely on upset alert here. And is Vanderbilt underrated? Probably. I mean, they're probably an underrated football team relative to what their potential appears to be. How many other schools? These two schools, South Carolina and Vanderbilt, they have played the same team. And by any metric, points scored, I guess points allowed, the advantage goes to South Carolina. By any metric, really, other than that, you give the advantage to Vanderbilt and say, yeah, they played the Hokies better than South Carolina did. I think this is a tight game. I think it's a close field goal game. Remember earlier when I said this is one of my best bets, or that I had a best bet coming up on the show? I'm calling an audible. Omaha! In the middle of recording this particular show, I do not have a best bet in this segment. I do have one coming up in the next segment, though, which is really exciting for all of us. So South Carolina favored at home. Got to put on a good display for the fans here. Against Vanderbilt by 4.5 points. I'm so tempted, so incredibly tempted to take Vanderbilt to pull the upset here. It wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me whatsoever. I mean, if Vanderbilt wins this game, my surprise meter with, Appalachian State over Michigan being a 10, this would be like a 2.5 on Spencer's surprise meter. So not super high there. At home, though, I struggle to pick against the Gamecocks. It is not Cocktober, but guess what? I like South Carolina. Liked them coming into the year. I like enough what I've seen so far. And the best player in the game is on one side of the field, and that is South Carolina's in front of the home fans. I will take South Carolina to win. I will take them ever so slightly to cover. I think this is a lower score game than people might think. 27-21. I'm going 27-21, just hitting the under there, which is 48.5, according to our friends at FanDuel. Speaking of the common opponent that these two schools have, Virginia Tech. Do you realize what happened to Virginia Tech last week? I'll tell you. The seat underneath Brent Pry's rear end got a lot warmer when he gave up 34 unanswered points. He's a defensive guy, and he gave up 34 unanswered points to Vanderbilt at home. That wasn't a good look. Virginia Tech is a program that should be able to get towards the top of the ACC at least once every 3 years. They haven't done that yet under Brent Pry. Last year was a disappointing season. They're off to a really disappointing start this year. They're going to pick up wins finally and remember what it feels like to score more points than your opponent through 4 quarters. When they play Old Dominion and Wofford for their next 2 games, then it's 8 straight ACC opponents, rather. That would be news to some if Virginia Tech was playing 8 straight SEC games. That would mean they have moved conferences. But the ACC slate doesn't start out brutal, and then it gets harder. At NC State, Wake Forest, at Georgia Tech, that's a tough game, and Cal at home before you play Louisville, at Florida State, Miami, and at Virginia. I don't love the outlook right now for Virginia Tech. If this is not at least an 8-win season, which I tried to give a benefit of the doubt and say Virginia Tech can do it, they'll get to 8-4. I think if it's not at least 8 wins, 7, sure, we'll consider, I suppose, keeping Brent Pry around. But if this is a team that misses a bowl game or has another losing record by the end of the season, then yeah, you could see some ripple effects in college football because Brent Pry could get fired. Now who gets hired? And then we start the whole coaching carousel. So that's the ripple effect I mentioned earlier that Diego Pavia and the Commodores set off last week, because you didn't just give Virginia Tech a loss on their home field. You gave them a loss that in some ways is embarrassing and can be a point that the administration looks at and goes, yeah, this is not where it's supposed to be in year 4. This isn't good enough. We've got to make a change. There's a surprise team in the Big 12. First, this episode brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model, which I can appreciate. I'm a big golfer, and I'm very process-oriented when I get out on the golf course. I played earlier today. Tied my friend on the last hole to have the match. In case you were wondering, you probably weren't. I did that because I'm very detail-oriented with everything that I do on the course. And that's the way Mazda approaches their cars, and that is something I can really appreciate. You make everyday drives feel like anything but every day. From smooth handling to intuitive controls, you've got it all with all-wheel drive standard. In every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like the players for your team, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Some of you might listen to my game picks each week and think, Spencer, you're insane. Spencer, you're crazy. How could you possibly think that if you think I'm so wrong all the time and you want to fade me every week, hey, you would have gone 3-2 last week. Just saying. Go for it. FanDuel, it's right there. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You've got everything that you could possibly want. You have got point spreads, you've got money line, you've got over-under totals. It's all over there at FanDuel. There's a bunch of great information. There's a lot of different options, prop bets, everything you need, FanDuel's got it. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Check them out at FanDuel.com. You know who looks like the surprise team in the Big 12? The Arizona Wildcats. They play Kansas State this Friday at home. I bet if you had gotten a line on this game before the season started, it would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of Kansas State minus 10 to Kansas State minus 12. The Wildcats of Kansas State were seen as a Big 12 title contender. They still could be, perhaps. Do what Utah did years ago in the Pac-12, start 1-2 in non-conference play, and then once league play ramps up, start playing your best ball. That's entirely possible. They could do it. Do you realize that when the Wildcats from Manhattan go to the Wildcats in Tucson on Friday night, the Kansas State version of that particular animal is favored by just 1.5 points? That's because through 2 games against inferior competition, Arizona looks, wait for it, more than competent. They have put up 88 points, averaging 44 per game in their 2 matchups with Hawaii and Weber State. They have conceded 6 and 3 points. That may not sound like a lot, just because it's Hawaii and Weber State. Remember that this is an Arizona program that last year was riddled with dysfunction, was riddled with poor play, was riddled with turnovers, and so far, I'm watching Noah Fifita play 2 games. I don't really care who it's against. The confidence has to be pretty high. He hasn't thrown an interception yet. Arizona has not torn it up running the football, but again, 44 points per game and 4.5 points per game allowed. Just think about this. If you think I'm overreacting to those 2 games, I totally get it. I hear you. Just let me make this point. If coming into the season, you'd seen Arizona as a preseason Big 12 title contender and they had those 2 outcomes, wouldn't those 2 games just be justifying what you thought about them coming into the season? Imagine if it was Arizona State, who of course has been ridiculously dropped from the top 25. Mississippi State hasn't been entered in. I don't know. Florida State only won 2 games last year, beat Alabama. They're both ranked. Instead, Mississippi State and Arizona State are both unranked, which makes absolutely positively no sense. But as we know, the AP voters, some of them don't even think or care about what they're doing, which is awesome to see since it legitimately influences the sport. Anyway, if you thought Arizona was Arizona State coming into the year, or Iowa State, or Kansas State, for that matter. If preseason Texas Tech, some people, me, had number 1 in the power rankings for the Big 12 coming into the season, played those 2 games against Hawaii and against Weber State, and had those 2 scores of an average score of 44 to 4.5, which isn't possible, but you get what I'm going for here. Wouldn't you say, oh, they look just like I thought they were? I thought they were one of the best teams in the Big 12. So Arizona looks good. Now they have the chance to prove it. Chance to prove it here against Kansas State in a game that I think can define Kansas State's season. I legitimately think Kansas State's season is on the line right here. They lost a tight one to Iowa State because they couldn't convert a couple of 4th down situations offensively and defensively. And then they got upset by Army on their home field, who lost to an FCS program the week prior. I mean, it's not good for Chris Kleiman and company. If you go on the road and lose to a team that people saw as being bottom of the conference coming into the year because they were bottom of the conference last year, hey, maybe last year's Arizona State is this year's Arizona. Maybe that's just what they do down there in the desert. But you know what? I was about to pick Kansas State to win the game. I don't know what I have to feel good about. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the Wildcats. Ha, see, I could have just tricked you and left that out there, but I'm not that much of a dweeb. So I'm taking Kansas State to win the game because their season is on the line. I think they finally figure it out. But if they lose their first Big 12 game, this could spiral a la Florida State last year, who also lost a tight one in Ireland and then had a 2-10 campaign. So I think Kansas State avoids that here, and they go and get this done. You've got to find a way to get Avery Johnson settled in throwing the ball. I think Tucson should be on fire. Fans should show up. This is a big, big game for Arizona and Brent Brennan, who is kind of coaching for his job after the disaster of last season. Speaking of exciting games in the Big 12, here's one of my best bets for the week and a preview of Friday's best bet segment here at Locked On College Football. West Virginia plus 7.5. I have a rule, and it usually works out pretty well. Not all the time, but usually. In a rivalry game, take the points. Take the point. This is not a 100% hit rate, but when you are getting 7.5 points at home, coming off a week in which you were embarrassed by Ohio, West Virginia had one of the worst losses for the Big 12 last week. They lost to Ohio, but they were on the road. Now they come back home. It's the backyard brawl. This is one of the most underrated rivalries in all of college football. I cannot wait to watch it. It's going to be really fun. It always is. Eli Holstein is still there as Pitt's quarterback. I think Pitt wins the game. No doubt about it. Because they're the better football team. I don't expect much from West Virginia in Rich Rodriguez's first season. And Goldstein so far this year, over 70% completion rate. He has thrown a couple of interceptions, but he's thrown 8 touchdowns in the 2 games that Pitt has played so far. They've rolled against inferior competition, but they're going on the road. This is going to be the best team that they have played so far, even though West Virginia, I don't think, is all that good. I will take them to win 31-27. Give me the Panthers to win, but give me the Mountaineers to cover. This is a big-time rivalry game. I hope plenty of you tune in to see the spectacle that's going to exist in Morgantown on Saturday, because you got to understand, just generally speaking, that rivalries are one of the things that separate college football from everything else in the NFL. And this is one of those games. You can, whether it's the backyard brawl, the holy war between BYU and Utah, you got to know. You got to know. You got to watch. It needs to be the sort of appointment television that you think about with the game between Ohio State and Michigan, or the Iron Bowl between Alabama and Auburn. You got to be able to tune into these games because there aren't that many. They only come around so often, and they are just so much darn fun. So I like Pitt this week. Sorry to my guy Mountaineer Paul over at Locked On West Virginia, but I'm taking Pitt 31-27, West Virginia, and the points. One of my best bets for the week. The rest of them, those will show up tomorrow. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.